On Idea Channel, we talk about TV shows, cultural practices, web ephemera, video games. We try to take seriously, but not too seriously, parts of the cultural landscape many people wouldn't expect worthy of serious takes. And we do that through the lens of theory, critical theory, media theory, whatever it is Zizek does. Sometimes those theories are interesting or complicated enough to warrant examination on their own. So today, and in future episodes like this one, we're gonna talk about and pick apart one theory in particular to see if or how much it helps us make sense of the world around us. We're gonna call these videos, But Wait. What makes one medium different from another? I mean, there are obvious differences. Books are made of paper, or they used to be. Films are made of celluloid, or they used to be. But do those differences account for the full breadth of how we experience each differently? Probably not. Reading isn't the same as watching, and watching isn't the same as listening, but often even reading isn't the same as reading. Watching isn't the same as watching, and so on. One theory for describing the differences between media comes from famed media theorist, public intellectual Canadian, and haircut haver Marshall Mcluhan. If you've only heard one thing about this guy, it's probably his pronouncement that the medium is the message. But Mcluhan was a prolific writer, lecturer, and pontificator on all things media, especially television and advertising. He filled a role we don't really have today, rock star media theorist. Sure, I mean, we do have public intellectuals, but mostly they're associated with the hard sciences. You got your Neils, your Bills, your Stevens, but when it comes to people who talk about media or culture today, we don't really have anyone who rolls as deep as Mcluhan did. Mcluhan had a large and often captive audience to lay no shortage of theory on. His work stretches into many corners of media, culture, and technology studies, and in one of those corners sits his theory about hot and cold media. In his hugely influential book, Understanding Media, Mcluhan provides a framework for thinking of different media, like television, print, writing systems, radio, the phone, films, as either hot or cold. He puts his distinction in deceptively clear terms. A hot medium extends one single sense in high definition, while a cool medium is, quote, low definition. High definition hot media, Mcluhan says, don't require as much audience participation, while cool media require more participation. Oh, and he also uses cold and cool interchangeably. Not cool, Marshall, or should I say not cold? Anyway, example time. Radio is hot because it focuses singularly on the sense of hearing. It communicates its intended message entirely via sound, and radio producers work very, very hard to do that. They develop mannered delivery techniques, do careful editing and mixing, and so on and so forth. There's no room for participation between sender and receiver because radio is designed with a passive listener in mind. It's dense with information, making it high definition, which may also make a bit more sense considering our main man Marshall was writing in the mid-20th century. So anyways, radio, hot. Speech, on the other hand, is a cool medium because it requires tons of supporting information to get a message across. Human vocal cords can make all sorts of sounds. Fly me to the, but not nearly as many as an AM/FM system and connected speaker.
It was good, this honest work up in New York.
And what sounds vocal cords can produce, and mostly we're talking about speech now, often require significant interpretation. In Mcluhan's words, quote, so little is given and so much has to be filled in by the listener, end quote, when it comes to speech. That interpretation between sender and receiver is an essential characteristic of cool media. It's artful, symbolic, and multi-streamed. Photographs are hot because they are for the eye in the same way radio is for the ear. Cartoons are cool because they are low definition and require symbolic interpretation and therefore participation. The telephone is also cool because in the 60s it was very low definition and more like speech than radio. Surprisingly for Mcluhan, movies are hot and television is cool. Let's talk about that. Mcluhan sees television as cool because it requires endless participation participation, but not in the way that you probably think. With the TV, the viewer is the screen, he writes. Mcluhan describes TV images as low definition, literally lower quality than film images. The TV image is visually low in data, he writes, and compares it to ancient handwritten manuscripts. We have to labor on the visual field to assemble its low quality approximation into the image it hopes to become. By comparison, the film image is more like the printed word, he says, precise, exacting, and even, quote, scientific. Mcluhan says movies are hot because they're direct and intense. Audience participation is low because, like radio, the content is very well defined. Its quality is very high. The audience needn't work too hard to perceive or understand the film image, which, remember, is different from the story told by it. Mcluhan sees movies as fidelitous and natural. He talks of the sheer quantities of data contained in each film frame and how films can capture realities. Armed now with some background, I'm gonna leave it to you to figure out why Mcluhan would say that a lecture is hot, but a seminar is cool, why paper and the phonetic alphabet are hot, but stone tablets, hieroglyphics, and ideographic writing systems are cool. Now, though hot and cold involves talk of work, quality, and participation, there's no real value judgment here. Mcluhan tips his hand occasionally and suggests what media and characteristics he thinks are more fun, but he's not hanging signs reading hot media rules and cool media drools. Really, as the title of his book suggests, he's providing a way to understand media as an extension of people. In this case, how stimulus relates to involvement. Hot media provides lots of stimulus, requires little involvement. Cold media, a little stimulus and requires lots of involvement. Or as Mcluhan put it in short, the hot form excludes, the cold one includes. But wait. Hot and cold is nice, and it does answer our question about the differences between media, but there are a few holes in the hull of this theoretical boat. One of the more common criticisms of Mcluhan's distinction is that hot v cold, like all dichotomies, is actually just false. Ruth and Elihu Katz point out that Mcluhan often does talk of certain media being cooler or hotter than others, which they say indicates a relational aspect to this idea. Hot versus cold isn't a rigid binary distinction, in other words. Speech may be cool, but it's arguably hotter than talking on the phone. Television is cool, but by comparison, I imagine Mcluhan would see the internet as positively frigid. Another criticism is not just of hot and cold specifically, but of Mcluhan generally. It concerns, ironically, his frequent conflation of medium and message, or maybe more accurately, form and content. There's no necessary correlation between any one medium and the quality or definition of its content. There's no guarantee that because a medium has supported or popularized particular practices, it must or always will. Mcluhan treats each medium as a monolith, stable, consistent, and recognizable by the features of its content. This, again, might have to do with Mcluhan's era. In the 1960s, radio, television, and film were arguably much more monolithic. The main counter-argument that I'm interested in is one that has to do with Mcluhan's ideas about participation. Cold media, he says, are more participatory than hot media, which are dense, precise, and meaningful, therefore requiring less work on the part of their audience. I would wager this distinction has nothing to do with the medium and everything to do with the audience, by which I mean there are no hot and cold media, but hot and cold people. The first thing to get out of the way is the idea that basically all media are interactive. Artworks, radio, movies, television, podcasts, interactive. Even if you're just sitting there taking them in, you have an active role in their existence. When reading, you may picture a setting. Watching a movie, you may consider the motivations of the characters or just the beauty of the shots. Reading comics, you laugh. Listening to the radio, you think, I like this, or too many ads. All of these things are active, and all of these things are participation. To not participate in a piece of media, you must not experience it. The participation that Mcluhan writes about has to do with the work audiences do in constituting some piece of media through their experience of it. But to say that participation is determined, limited, or extended by the media itself seems really strange to me. I think it's fair to say that a certain medium may stereotypically be considered lower definition, but to assume radio, movies, or recorded music's higher quality production give them an authority or clarity which lets audiences off the hook as far as taking an active role in assembling the final product, I'm not so sure. For me, at least, Participation is different at different times, inconsistent within a particular medium. There are certain films which feel much lower definition than certain comic books, and a fair difference, I think, in the stimulus/involvement relationship of different novels, even if it's always just text, or even just text on paper. This relationship is influenced by story, sure, but also greatly affected by the way creators take advantage of the capabilities and limitations of their medium, and how I respond. If, for others, that participation ends up being the same across a particular medium, that has more to do with them than the medium itself, I think. We always bring ourselves, our experiences, and expectations to the media we interact with. To determine participation by a medium or its quality is to ignore, I think, the state of the self, the media ecosystem, and the relationship between those two things. Media are not hot or cold, but to put it in Mcluhan's terms, people hot up and cool down in response to the media they consume. This is the usefulness of Mcluhan's theory. It frames the idea that our participation with media fluctuates. Maybe not between and because of the characteristics of each particular medium, but it does so nonetheless. Radio may not be all hot all the time for all people, and the internet may not be a frozen tundra for each and every person firing up Chrome, or Internet Explorer, let's be honest. Rather than comparing one medium monolith to another in some grand, totalizing fashion, hot and cold gives us two things. One, some potential insight into how media was used and viewed in mid-century North America, and two, a way to theorize around our ever-shifting states and responses to media and its content, showing us that while it may not be cool, maybe we are.
You're cool.
We're gonna be cool.
You're so cool.
What do y'all think? Is media hot or cold? Let us know in the comments and I will respond to some of them in next week's comment response video. In this week's comment response video, we talk about your thoughts regarding artificial intelligence and how it wrote an Idea Channel script. If you want to watch that one, you can click here or find a link in the doobly-doo. In case you missed it, I was on Mental Floss this last week talking about America's birthday. We'll also put a link to that in the description if you want to watch it. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit. Links in the doobly-doo. And the tweet of the week comes from Ingrid Henkel, who did a line-by-line interpretation of the AI-generated video, and it is very interesting. So she says that she's never watched an Idea Channel episode, doesn't really know what the show is about, and so came at it from a completely sort of, I guess, maybe neutral standpoint. And the stuff that she gets out of the AI generated script it's very interesting. If you read no other interpretation of AI generated gibberish this week, make it this one.